Hello and welcome to the Magic Story Podcast. This is your guide to the characters, the planes, and events of the multiverse. I'm your host, Natalie.
And I'm your other host, Harless. We actually have a brand new Magic set that is on the horizon that is called Magic: The Gathering Foundations.
And Foundations is this quintessential Magic set, right? It's designed to be basically your onboarding, your entry point into the multiverse. And it essentially shows us everything that's cool about the game of Magic.
So we thought that we would take some time today to go through some of the characters you're going to see in this set, some of whom we have seen on the podcast before, and one we have actually never talked about. So I'm really excited to get into that today.
Me too.
Now, Magic takes place in the multiverse across all these different planes, right? And you can think of a plane as kind of a dimension. And each of these planes of existence or dimensions that you want to think about, they all have their own histories. They all have their own cultures. They look completely different. They're all completely unique.
And if you're looking to learn more about these planes of the multiverse, like you said, there are characters who are basically subject matter experts, and those are our planeswalkers. Now, if you are a planeswalker, you essentially have the ability to hop from plane to plane across the multiverse. And because of that, many of them have become the multiverse's greatest heroes.
Now, what in the heck is Natalie talking about by saying sparking and planeswalker and all these crazy words? Well, your spark is really interesting. And if you are able to have this moment where you kind of ignite your spark, you can become a planeswalker. Now, everyone is kind of born either with or without the ability to be a planeswalker. It's attached to your actual soul. So like when you come into existence, you either have the ability to become a planeswalker or you don't. But for people who do have that ability, what happens is that they'll go through some moment in their life. And sometimes this is losing someone they care about. And sometimes this is fighting injustice. It's sometimes even tempting fate or defying fate. But whatever that moment is, it's usually this hugely important moment to the character that it is happening to. And what happens is this moment allows that spark that's been kind of laying dormant in them to ignite. And that gives them the ability to hop around from plane to plane.
Yeah, that's really well said, Harless.
Well, and also, planeswalkers aren't only heroes, right? We've got some villains too.
That's very true.
If you want to dig deep into Magic, you can find everything from a shape-shifting dragon to an actual swarm of bugs that makes up one of our villains. But today we are going to be focusing on those heroes that really utilize their planeswalker abilities to try to make the multiverse a better place for everyone to be in.
Yeah, so Magic Foundations actually features 5 of these planeswalkers. And the multiverse is so vast, right? There are just countless planes and countless places to journey. And because of that, there are so many cool humans and non-humans for us to talk about. So let's talk about these 5 planeswalkers.
Let's get into it. So Natalie, you mentioned non-humans. I think we should start there. Let's talk about the best cat dad in the multiverse, a Johnny.
Yeah, a Johnny. I mean, every friend group has that one person who's going to bring you water or, take care of you when you're sick or just give you a big hug. And for the planeswalkers, I think that's a Johnny Goldman.
Oh, 100%. A Johnny is so regal, so majestic, and so kind and caring. And I think that we really get to see a lot of the qualities of playing white mana in a Johnny. It's a lot of protection, right? Like protecting the people around you. Yeah. I think a Johnny, for him, that is so important, is just being able to, I don't think a Johnny even thinks about it when he goes in to save somebody. I think he just automatically, there's a problem, I'm going to solve it. Someone screams, I'm running in that direction. Yeah, it's a Johnny 100%.
Yep. And he's been through so much,
oh my
right?
Gosh.
So for a little bit of backstory here on a Johnny, he was originally born on the plane of Alara.
Yeah, and on Alara, the color white actually represents death, and a Johnny was born with white fur.
Yeah, and when a white-furred Leonin was born on the plane of Alara, the other Leonin thought that something was wrong with that. So that was why, as you said, Harless, he was cast out. And, after all of that, and then his brother is killed, that's when his planeswalker spark ignited. And from there, a Johnny went on basically this vengeful warpath through the multiverse.
Yeah, he literally took his fallen brother's axe, took it up, said, you know what, I'm gonna get my revenge. But ultimately, a Johnny realized that revenge and taking a vengeful path, that's just not gonna lead to peace ever. And he changed his tactics, and now he's really become a mentor for a lot of our planeswalkers. And he spends a lot of time taking them kind of under his, I was going to say wing, but I think paw is more accurate.
I see what you did there. Yeah, and Ajani does still struggle with that guilt, right, from his younger days. But like you said, he's really turned into more of a mentor now, and he's definitely a force for good. Although he had a brief stint where he joined the villainous Phyrexians during the Phyrexian invasion. And hey, that was where we picked up with the Magic Story podcast with Dominaria United.
Yeah, so if you go all the way back to season 1 of the podcast, which as Natalie mentioned was Dominaria United, you get to see a Johnny kind of showing up to help and then unfortunately becoming Phyrexianized and getting his villain arc, which was so brutal because I just think of a Johnny as such a peaceful, protective Leonin. And so to have him be Phyrexianized,
that was huge.
Was brutal. Oh,
yeah.
It was a rough time in Magic.
But luckily it didn't last all that
Absolutely
long.
Not.
Like, we got our Johnny back.
Yeah.
But you know, it took a bit to get there.
It did. And I will say, you know, I think the guilt he had from before and the guilt he has now from surviving the Phyrexian invasion and all the things he was forced to do during the Phyrexian invasion is probably going to play a role in, you know, adding to that guilt, adding to that sense of responsibility to others.
Yep.
Yeah. But now that Johnny is really back to his old self again, now that he's not Phyrexianized anymore, focus on helping the multiverse, focus on helping the people of the multiverse. You know, Johnny had a rough life, but that is not going to make him into a rough person. You know, one of the things I love the most about Johnny is I feel that Johnny is very strong and is very capable.
Definitely.
And is a warrior.
Oh, yeah.
But he has a softness that is able to permeate that toughness and that loss and that grief.
Yeah.
And I just love that about him.
Yeah, he's the kind of cat that is not going to let a loss keep him from wanting to help others, right? And wherever there is someone in need across the multiverse, he's going to be there to protect him.
100%.
So if we're talking about newer planeswalkers onto the scene of Magic, we have to talk about Kaito Shizuki. And Kaito has actually only been around for about 2 years, which is crazy.
No, that's wild. That is, I just like, I have such a hard time believing that. And I think it's because Kamigawa was when Magic like grabbed me by the heart and didn't let go. So when we met Kaito, it feels to me like it was so long ago because that's when I was like, oh man, I really get this. Not only that, but the first time I opened a card that made me go, oh, I understand why people collect this game and like look for specific cards, because I actually opened a Neon Ink card in Kamigawa and I was so stoked. It was amazing. And so Kaito and Kamigawa to me really represent me coming into the multiverse like head first, right? And it just feels like it was so long ago. I have such a hard time remembering that Kaito has not been around for years and years.
Yeah, I mean, he's become a fan favorite in 2 years, which is a feat, but it's also for really good reason.
So let me give you a little bit of backstory on Kaito instead of just fangirling about him. So Kaito was born on the plane of Kamigawa, and he premiered with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, as I just mentioned, and which is, of course, this world that blends futuristic technology with these very ancient spirits of the realm. So it's very deep-rooted in history, but also very future-facing, which is awesome. Like, what's not to like about Kamigawa? Seriously, it's absolutely amazing. So the leader of this plane is, of course, the Wanderer, aka the Emperor. And Kaito grew up really close to the Emperor. They were besties. There's this beautiful piece from when they were kids in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Oh, I love that piece.
They're playing on a bridge together, and it's so joyful. And it really showcases their strong bond that they've had ever since they were kids. And so when she disappeared, he went to go find her. And on that adventure is actually when Kaito's Planeswalker spark ignited.
And Kaito, since then, has really had to fend for himself. And sometimes he's had to resort to some more cunning means.
Well, he's a ninja. He has to.
It's Kaito.
It's built in.
Yeah, and thankfully, he has now been reunited with the Emperor, the Wanderer, and of course, he is, forever aided by Himoto, his robot Tanuki friend, his all adorable companion.
And for Kaito, his time traversing the multiverse, partially in search of the Wanderer, partially doing other Planeswalker things like, helping stop the Phyrexian invasion, has really made him realize how important home is to him and how much Kamigawa means to him. I mean, we saw in the Phyrexian invasion, he risked everything to save the plane of Kamigawa. And really now he's looking for who he is, right? He's always been the Wanderer's friend, but he's Kaito Shizuki. He's his own person. He's his own planeswalker. And I really feel like he's trying to figure out what comes next for him. But, when you travel all over the multiverse and you're in all these different cultures and you're in meeting all these different people and seeing all these different hardships, it's probably not very easy to figure out who you are versus what you're picking up from everywhere else. So I feel like Kaito's really focused on spending time at home right now, rebuilding, being close to the Wanderer, being close to other companions like Nashi, and really just helping home become what he knows it's capable of becoming, the best version of Kamigawa that it can be. Okay, so we talked about a couple of heroes. We talked about a Johnny, like most heroic in my mind. And we talked about Kaito, a little cunning. Maybe he doesn't always skirt by the rules, but, ultimately very heroic. But I want to talk about one of my favorite planeswalkers who is not considered nice because she doesn't care about being nice, because you know what? She doesn't care about you. She doesn't even think about you. And I'm talking about the Queen of the Dead, Liliana herself.
Now, although she's a little bit more heroic now, there was a time in Liliana's somewhat recent past where she was the multiverse's most infamous necromancer. Now she's only somewhat infamous.
Well, she did hide herself away in Strixhaven pretending to be a professor for a little while. So I think that's of her own accord, right?
Maybe she's had some introspection.
She's choosing to fall back into the shadows. We'll see what happens with her next. But I absolutely love Liliana. She is amazing character design, amazing. She defies a lot of stereotypes. She does what she wants to do. She does what's right for her, right? And that's not always what's right for everybody else. And I think that gets her into trouble sometimes. But I like to think that Liliana, her intentions are based in, she wants her intentions to be based in logic. She wants her intentions to be like, yes, this is the power grab moment. But I think ultimately deep down, Liliana has a lot of emotion that she, has to contend with to keep herself as this like very powerful, tough exterior all the time.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that plays into her backstory. And actually, fun fact, Liliana is actually centuries old.
She doesn't look it.
She doesn't look it. She looks great for her age.
She does.
And way back in her earlier days, she had actually made a deal to resurrect her brother. And what this deal did not divulge to her is that he would be resurrected as a zombie.
Yeah, so her brother gets sick.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to save my family here. Makes a deal, obviously not the way she wanted it to go.
Oops,
my brother's a zombie.
Yeah, so anyway.
Awkward Thanksgiving that year.
Pretty awkward. And so awkward, in fact, that she is exiled. And after she is exiled away from her family, she realizes that she should only really ever look out for one person, and that's herself. So Liliana has begun to give up her insatiable chase for power, but she's not a complete do-gooder yet.
And I hope she never will be.
Likewise. That's what we love about Liliana.
Oh, 100%.
And her story arc, is slowly letting go of that, villainous persona. And, she still sometimes fails at it, but she's trying to slowly be better and more in alignment with other heroes.
That's why I love Liliana, because while a lot of our heroes and villains operate in these areas of white and black, Liliana stays in the gray. Liliana is going to do what she wants to do that's going to protect the people she cares about, and everyone else can deal, right? She's not like a Johnny. She's not going to jump in front of a sword for a stranger. She doesn't care about that stranger. She doesn't know that stranger. That's not important to her. That's not the way that Liliana is heroic. Liliana is heroic because she will not let the people she does care about and the things that she does care about and does want to happen go to the wayside. She's not going to let anything happen to her people, and she's not going to let anything happen to her plans either. Now, Natalie, some planeswalkers are really subtle. They operate with stealth. They operate with grace. They think things through before they jump into the fray. But that's not Shandra.
No, that is not Shandra. She knows what she wants, and she's going to get it. And usually that means fire is going to be involved.
oh, 100% it's going to involve fire if Chandra's involved. But imagine being a human whose emotions are tied to fire coming out of your body. I would not last a day. I would accidentally turn my entire house to ash because I got hungry and there wasn't a snack available for me. I don't know how she does it, but it's truly amazing. Her fiery passion literally manifests as fire. And she uses this to really propel the other planeswalkers into action. You have people like we've mentioned, Kaito, who will sit back and they'll plan and they'll think, okay, what are all my escape routes? What is the best way to come in here? I don't want to go in guns blazing. I want to do this the smart way. And while they're figuring that out, Chandra's already halfway to the battlefield with a fireball in one hand and probably screaming, like about how she's going to decimate everyone or something, right? Like she knows exactly where she needs to be in a fight, and that is at the center of it with her fireballs.
And her rebellious streak actually started after she rose up against an oppressive consulate on her home plane. And since then, she has catapulted across the multiverse with that fire-strong sense of adventure and freedom. And it is hard to get tied down and settle down when you have the ability to go across the multiverse and you have a personality like she does. And some people might call Shandra chaotic, but I think she would call herself passionate.
I think it really is passion. I think there is a method to the chaos with Shandra, and that method is must protect things I care about at all costs. But Chandra's really all about action. She's going to jump in. She's going to solve the problem while you're talking about it. And that's one of the things that I just will always appreciate about Shandra.
And she is not concerned with questions like, is this safe? Or is this efficient? No, Shandra wants to experience all that the multiverse has to offer, even if that means she has to act a bit brash.
I feel like we talked about how Johnny is the friend that he probably plans the trip if you're going on a girls' trip, right? That Johnny's the planner. Chandra's the person that shows up with just a handful of clothes because she forgot a bag, but then takes you on the most spontaneous side
and it's the
quest
best ever.
That's the best part of the vacation.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
So I want to talk about a planeswalker that we've actually never discussed on the Magic Story podcast before, which is really wild.
It's wild.
Yeah. And that's Vivian Reed. Now, Vivian has been a part of Magic Story since about 2018 when she was introduced in a core set. We've seen her in Ikoria. My favorite set she was in is Streets of New Capenna because, in my opinion, she has one of the best outfits we've ever put on a planeswalker ever.
True.
She's
true story.
So stylish in that set. That whole set, it's Art Deco. I mean, come on, it's amazing. But particularly Vivian's character design with her arc bow look amazing.
But a lot of players actually don't know the story behind the woman wielding the arc bow, Vivian Reed. So let's give her some backstory. So Vivian is actually from the plane of Scala. And you probably haven't heard of Scala because it was destroyed. Yeah. And an evil dragon many years ago had come in and basically turned the plane into a barren wasteland. But it was kind of like in their last act, the people of Scala came together and created what's called the arc bow. And the arc bow is essentially, it embodies the spirits of Scala's wildlife, almost kind of like a magical nature textbook.
Now, as the wielder of the arc bow, Vivian pledged to avenge her home, to take out this dragon, right? And while she hasn't yet been able to take care of the dragon, she has pledged herself to helping save the natural world of the multiverse.
So no matter who Vivian is fighting against, her arc bow has always been at the ready. And she carries that physical reminder with her all the time.
Yeah. She really wants to make sure that even though she wasn't able to save her home plane, she is able to preserve other places in the multiverse that are like her home, that deserve to be protected.
And being a planeswalker means that you take on a lot of responsibility, and Vivian is definitely no exception to that.
Yeah, absolutely. She's watched planes and tyrants fall. She's led a revolution. She's even made deals with some fiery foes.
And she does it all in the name of her home. And we can only hope that she'll find some sort of peace during it all.
Yeah, one of the things I love about Vivian is she is able to find that peace in the wild, in the forest. She loves wildlife. She loves nature. And as someone who grew up on a very idyllic farm myself, I get that. You know, if something happened to my home, I would be absolutely devastated. And I would also devote my life to bringing that back and bringing that beauty of the natural world into the forefront and really protecting that and being the voice for something that doesn't have a voice. And I love that about Vivian. It's really, I feel like Vivian gives major playing a druid in a D&D campaign vibes, right? She is absolutely there to protect the forest, to protect nature when no one else will.
All right, so those are the 5 planeswalkers that are being featured in Magic Foundations. Each of them gives a small taste as what you can find into the multiverse, whether it's a cunning ninja or a fiery mage or just a cat dad.
Hey, a Johnny's a lot more than a cat dad. But if you did like any of these characters, they all have tons of lore, and you can find all of that lore on mtgstory.com. You can go there, you can dive into more characters, you can dive into any of the planes we talked about today. Anything that you want to know about Magic Story, you can check it out there.
Thank you so much for joining Harless and myself on this plane hopping journey as we introduced you to a small glimpse of the multiverse.
Natalie and I hope you found a planeswalker that you can relate to, whoever that may be. But here's to igniting your sparks, future Magic fans, and we hope you will join us again soon for more of the same on the Magic Story podcast. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts.
We will see you next time, but until then, have a magical day.